Okay, with the help of the good IT people at Baypath, I figured out how to use the iMovie again with a little bit of different clicking here and there. Anyway, so wanted to just do a quick recap of week 6 and then get into week 7 just a little bit. But the first thing I need to say is that I have to reschedule some of the phone calls this week. Okay, take a look. I can't do Wednesday night. I have to be somewhere else then. So I think there's Monday night, and there's also a lot of different times on Thursday. Okay, but let's see. Thinking back to last week's discussions, you did a really good job on talking about. Let's do this in the order that I have them here. New Stage Theater. Okay, you did a really good job there thinking about how New Stage Theater had some real problems because of its organizational structure, policies and procedures, its record keeping and reports, and its inability to align its financial strategies with its operational strategies. And those were the four separate discussion forums there. He did a really good job there. Note that in this week's materials, there's sort of like a long summary discussion sort of video that I've done in the past, and I think is useful to you, both in talking about New Stage Theater and also how it relates to the final. Okay, final. Okay, so that's there. It is a long video, but I think it's really worthwhile. The other thing that was key right in this week in Collins is this notion of the hedgehog, right? That you have to have your organization sort of focused on three things, but it's really the intersection of those three things that's really important, right? Your mission, obviously, what it is that you want to accomplish. It should line up with what you're really good at, what your expertise is, because if you're not good at providing at what your mission attempts to accomplish, you're going to be in some trouble, right? Because you won't try as you will if you don't have the expertise to achieve that mission. Well, then you're in trouble. And even if you have the expertise to that lines up with your mission, the other piece is money, right? You have to be able to figure out a way to drive money into your organization. And that then leads you to this spot in the middle where mission, expertise, and strategies for driving money into your organization all intersect. Okay? And so the other little side question here then is, how do I drive unrestricted revenues into my organization? Those golden apples on the organization as a tree, or the course as a tree PowerPoint that we looked at the beginning, right? It's those golden apples are the unrestricted revenue streams that gives your organization liquidity, because you can save those to create that rainy day fund, and it also gives you the operational independence to pursue something with your own money, unrestricted money, that's not tied to what a funder wants you to do or a grant requires you to do. Okay? And so, out of last week's discussions also about the maturation of the sector, we should have this notion now, right, that in order for you to be a sustainable organization, you have to be competitive with the other nonprofits, frankly, that you compete with. Right? Baypath is a nonprofit. It competes with 5 other colleges that are within probably 15 miles of, actually less than that, 10 miles of its campus. And then a little further up the valley here, there are 1, two, three, four other really prestigious large universities that it competes with. So in about a 20-mile radius here, BayPath competes with 11 colleges. And so for it to succeed, it obviously has to compete. And so that's just a reality of the nonprofit world, that no matter what you're doing and no matter where you're doing it, there's probably an alternative nonprofit that funds could go to achieve the same thing. But what you have to do then is to figure out your niche and your competitive advantage and how you're going to be able to drive money into your organization so that you can remain solvent. Okay? And so normally nonprofits don't, I don't want to say normally, but people who are new to the field, let's put it that way, and people who are coming into this program don't always have that orientation. And so when we think about the New Stage Theater and their financial problems, one way of solving them is to think about how they can drive money into their organization by capitalizing on their expertise and what they really do well. And so again, that gets them hopefully operating in the sweet spot here. Okay, not just up here where they put on the fancy plays that the local audience doesn't maybe understand or appreciate too much. You can do some of that, that's right, but you also got to think about, okay, how am I going to drive money in? And there are many assets that they have that they can use to actually do mission, capitalize on what they're good at, and drive money into their organization. And you guys did a really good job of that in one of the discussion forums, discussing those possibilities, right? The camps for the kids in the summer, the adult drama classes, renting out the theater that they have. One that I didn't see yet was there's a nearby college. You know, maybe they can become the theater department of the college, or somehow provide some of the classes, get paid for them. Okay? All right, so not to beat the dead horse. Let's see, the last thing I was supposed to talk about here, yes, was week 7. And in week 7, we are basically looking at risk and liabilities. And there are some chapters in Zeitlo that talk about both of those things, risk and liabilities. The main point that I want to make about liability and taking on debt as a liability is that, just like with you and me, debt's not a bad thing. We get a mortgage so we can buy a house, or we get a car loan so we can buy a car. But the point is that once you take on those loans, it's really hard to renegotiate them. And once you take on a loan for your organization, it's really hard to renegotiate them. So when you are thinking about the size of your debt compared to the benefits you're going to get from that debt and your ability to repay that debt, you have to make sure that things are in balance, right? Otherwise, what's going to happen over time is that debts are going to keep coming, or the repayment of the debt is going to continue to be required, and you may not have the money to actually make the repayment. So make sure that the risk of taking on debt is greater, that is in balance with the rewards and the benefits of taking on that debt, and certainly within your financial ability to repay. Okay? And then the rest of, that's really the main point of the readings in Zeitlo. There are also ways to minimize risk as it relates to legal liabilities and getting sued and stuff, and that's in one of the chapters too, I believe. Let's see. I guess the main thing in week 7, though, is just to think about some of the analytical tools that you'll come across in your professional career that help you calculate risk versus the benefits of taking a risk. I talk a little bit about cost-benefit analysis, which maybe you've come across, and there's a little piece there about regressions analyses, which you may or may not have come across, and both of those are really beyond the scope of the course here, but I wanted you to just get exposure to each, so that you know that even if they are presented to you as scientific fact, there are assumptions in the methodology that makes them imprecise. Okay, so I just want you to be aware that there is imprecision in both of those techniques that are often presented as scientific and exact. Okay, and then just lastly, the readings that we focus on, the risk analysis in the I'm forgetting the name of Bain and Vopal readings, are just a way of thinking about a decision that you may come up against. Essentially, the bird in the hand, is it worth two in the bush? That's essentially a very simple way of saying what this sort of complicated technique is. But essentially, you have to, a lot of times, we can just keep going on the course we're going, and we know that we'll get a certain outcome, or we can take a gamble, which will give us either a home run or a strikeout. And what you need to think, this technique helps you think about the difference, your preference for taking the gamble and getting a home run or a strikeout versus just continuing along as you are. And I don't know, I found the technique really useful in the pragmatic world, and so I take some time here to have you think about that. Okay? All right. So again, note that I had to cancel the Wednesday night phone calls. If you signed up for that night, please change. And I look forward to talking with you this week and seeing how you're doing in the course. Okay? All right. Thanks.